Hi Kaylin! It's good to see your video on Tuesday. Thank you so much for sharing your hometown with me. I've always imagined it a little bit smaller, but I guess because you were comparing it to Toronto, I can see why. But it's very lovely and beautiful, and thank you for sharing all about the bridges. So for today, I want to share a book that I have on my to-read list for the summer, and it's called Mere Christianity! It's by C.S.Lewis, and he's more famously known for his Chronicles of Narnia, and he's actually a Christian apologist. He's a Christian apologist, and he was a professor at Oxford and Cambridge, and he was an essayist, a broadcaster, a literary critique. Did I say Christian apologetic already? I don't know. Anyways, so I wanted to read this book called Mere Christianity because I wanted to learn ways of sharing my faith with other people, as you know, I am Christian. And the historical context for this book is also very interesting because I mentioned that he was a broadcaster earlier. Between 1942 and 1944, during World War I, he was asked to jump onto BBC's radio to discuss the idea of morals and what's right and wrong, and to share what Christians believe in. And so he does this with such grace that I really admire his work for, primarily because he's doing this for a non-Christian audience, which helps change up the language of how I would share with other people about my faith. But I'm also connecting to a part of history that I never had any experience with, which is the people of during World War I. So it's kind of interesting to think about the idea of, oh, if you turn on the radio that was broadcasting how many deaths happened or unspeakable destruction, and you would hear someone like one man just talk about something that we're kind of conditioned to think that we already know, but we haven't really rationalized it or looked at it with a critical eye. So this work isn't it's not like a huge philosophical work compared to some of his other works, but I think it's a very interesting read nonetheless. So I'm going to read Book 1, Chapter 1 for you. Book 1 is called Right and Wrong as a Clue to the Meaning of the Universe. And the first chapter is The Law of Human Nature. So he kind of starts from the bottom and works his way up to, okay, so if we had a parallel outside of the Christian faith, this is what it may look like, or this is what we all know, and then let's build up from there to kind of discuss what Christians believe. And so I think what's really interesting about the law of human nature as he explains it is something very unique to men or human beings. So the law of human nature. Everyone has heard people quarreling. Sometimes it sounds funny, and sometimes it sounds merely unpleasant. But however it sounds, I believe we can learn something very important from listening to the kind of things they say. They say things like, how'd you like it if someone did the same to you? That's my seat. I was there first. Leave him alone. He isn't doing you any harm. Why should you shove in first? Give me a bit of your orange. I gave you a bit of mine. Come on, you promised. People say things like that every day. Educated people as well as uneducated, and children as well as grown-ups. Now, what interests me about all these remarks is that the man who makes them is not merely saying that the other man's behavior does not happen to please him. He is appealing to some kind of standard of behavior which he expects the other man to know about, and the other man very seldom replies, "To hell with your standards!" Nearly always he tries to make out that what he has been doing does not really go against the standard, or that if it does, there is some special excuse. He pretends there is some special reason in this particular case why the person who took the seat first should not keep it, or that things were quite different when he was given the bit of orange, or that something has turned up which lets him off keeping his promise. It looks, in fact, very much as if both parties had in mind some kind of law or rule of fair play or decent behavior or morality, or whatever you like to call it, about which they really agreed. And they have. If they had not, they might, of course, fight like animals, but they could not quarrel in the human sense of the word. Quarreling means trying to show that the other man is in the wrong. And there would be no sense in trying to do that unless you and he had some sort of agreement as to what right and wrong are. Just as there would be no sense in saying that a footballer had committed a foul unless there was some agreement about the rules of football. Is it soccer that he's talking about? Soccer. Yeah, okay. Now, this law or rule about right and wrong used to be called the law of nature. Nowadays, when we talk of laws of nature, we usually mean things like gravitation or heredity or laws of chemistry. But when the older thinkers called the law of right and wrong the law of nature, they really meant the law of human nature. The idea was that just as all bodies are governed by the law of gravitation and organisms by biological laws, so the creature called man also had his law. With this great difference, that a body could not choose whether it obeyed the law of gravitation or not, but a man could choose either to obey the law of human nature or to disobey it. Ooh. We may put this in another way. Each man is at every moment subjected to several different sets of law, but there is only one of which of these he is free to disobey. As a body, he is subjected to gravitation and cannot disobey it. If you leave him unsupported in midair, he has no more choice about falling than a stone has. As an organism, he is subjected to various biological laws which he cannot disobey any more than an animal can. That is, he cannot disobey those laws which he shares with other things. But the law which is particular to his human nature, the law he does not share with other animals or vegetables or inorganic things, is the one he can disobey if he chooses. The law was called the law of nature because people thought that everyone knew it by nature and did not need to be taught it. They did not mean, of course, that you might not find an odd individual here and there who did not know it, just as you find a few people who are colorblind or have no ear for a tune. But taking the race as a whole, they thought that the human idea of decent behavior was obvious to everyone, and I believe they were right. If they were not, then all the things we said about the war were nonsense. What was the sense in saying the enemy were in the wrong unless right is a real thing, which the Nazis at bottom knew as well as we did, and ought to have practiced? If they had had no notion of what we mean by right, then though we might still have had to fight them, we could no more have blamed them for that than for the color of their hair. I know that some people say the idea of law of nature or decent behavior known to all men is unsound because different civilizations and different ages have had quite different moralities. But this is not true. There have been differences between their moralities, but there have never amounted to anything like a total difference. If anyone will take the trouble to compare the moral teachings of, say, the ancient Egyptians, Babylonians, Hindus, Chinese, Greeks, and Romans, what will really strike him will be how very like they are to each other and to our own. Think of a country where people were admired for running away in battle, or where a man felt proud of double-crossing all the people who had been kindest to him. You might as well try to imagine a country where two and two made five. Men had differed as regards what people you ought to be unselfish to, whether it was only your own family or your fellow countrymen or everyone, but they have always agreed that you ought not to put yourself first. Selfishness has never been admired. Men have differed as to whether you should have one wife or four, but they have always agreed that you must not simply have any woman you liked. But the most remarkable thing is, whenever you find a man who says he does not believe in a real right and wrong, you will find the same man going back to this moment later. He may break his promise to you, but if you try breaking one to him, he will be complaining, "It's not fair," before you can say Jack Robinson. A nation may say treaties don't matter, but then, next minute, they spoil their case by saying that the particular treaty they want to break was an unfair one. But if treaties do not matter, if there is no such thing as right and wrong, in other words, if there is no law of nature, what is the difference between a fair treaty and an unfair one? Have they not let the cat out of the bag and shown that whatever they say, they really know the law of nature just like anyone else? So that was the first 3 pages, and well, not really, 1, 2, 3, actually sorry, it was 6 pages that I read to you. So I hope that you liked that little excerpt, and it gives a little tone of what I'm reading. I'll let you know how it goes in another video, maybe not next week because I can't cheat like that. Yeah, I hope that you're doing well, and I look forward to your next video, and yeah, I don't know how to end this video. I miss you, and I think I should go eat. My stomach is growling, so